Hello everyone, we are back in the Yorkshire Dales today. Beautiful sunny weather, although the sun will come in and out, and there's a plane up there, but it won't cause us too many problems, I think. I'm going to read some poetry today, a mixture, no particular theme, but it's poetry I love and I hope you will too. I'm sure you will know some of them. So I'm going to start with a very famous one, the nonsense poem by Edward Lear, The Owl and the Pussycat. The owl and the pussycat went to sea in a beautiful pea-green boat. They took some honey and plenty of money wrapped up in a £5 note. The owl looked up to the stars above and sang to a small guitar. Oh, lovely pussy, oh, pussy, my love, what a beautiful pussy you are, you are, you are. Oh, what a beautiful pussy you are. Pussy said to the owl, oh, you elegant fowl, how charmingly sweet you sing. Oh, let us be married, too long we have tarried. But what shall we do for a ring? They sailed away for a year and a day to the land where the bong tree grows. And there, in a wood, a piggy-wig stood, with a ring at the end of her nose, her nose, her nose, with a ring at the end of her nose. Dear pig, are you willing to sell for 1 shilling your ring? Said the piggy, I will. So they took it away, were married next day by the turkey who lives on the hill. They dined on mince and slices of quince, which they ate with a runcible spoon. And hand in hand, on the edge of the sand, they danced to the light of the moon, the moon, the moon. They danced to the light of the moon. Well, now for something very different. This is by W.B. Yeats, the Irish poet, and it's one of two we'll read from his selection today. It's called The Song of the Wandering Angus. I went out to the hazel wood because a fire was in my head, and cut and peeled a hazel wand and hooked a berry to a thread. And when white moths were on the wing and moth-like stars were flickering out, I dropped the berry in a stream and caught a little silver trout. When I had laid it on the floor and went to blow the fire aflame, something rustled on the floor and someone called me by my name. It had become a glimmering girl with apple blossom in her hair, who called me by my name and ran and faded through the brightening air. Though I am old with wandering through hollow lands and hilly lands, I will find out where she has gone, and kiss her lips and take her hands, and walk among long dappled grass, and pluck till time and times are done the silver apples of the moon, the golden apples of the sun. Now, as I turn the pages of the anthology, on to a poem which is very popular when I read poetry in public. It's by a chap called W.H. Davies, born in 1871, and it's called Leisure. Oh, what is this life if, full of care, we have no time to stand and stare? No time to stand beneath the boughs and stare as long as sheep and cows. No time to see, when woods we pass, where squirrels hide their nuts in grass. No time to see in broad daylight streams full of stars like skies at night. No time to turn at beauty's glance and watch her feet, how they can dance. No time to wait till her mouth can enrich that smile, her eyes began. A poor life this, if full of care, we have no time to stand and stare. And now for something very different. This is a poem by the great comedian Spike Milligan. It's called The Bongaloo. What is a bongaloo, Daddy? A bongaloo, son, said I, is a tall bag of cheese, plus a Chinaman's knees and the leg of a nanny goat's eye. How strange is a bongaloo, Daddy? Oh, strange, I replied. When the sun's in the west, it appears in a vest, sailing out with the noonday tide. What shape is a bongaloo, Daddy? The shape, my son, I'll explain. It's tall round the nose, which continually grows in the general direction of Spain. Are you sure there's a bongaloo, Daddy? Am I sure, my son, said I. Why, I've seen it, not quite, on a dark, sunny night. Do you think that I'll tell you a lie? Now, the next one is, I think, the favourite of all the ones that I share in public. It's the one most commonly asked for, and it's by John Masefield. It's a piece that's also been set to music by the wonderful English composer John Ireland. It's called Sea Fever. I must down to the seas again, to the lonely sea and the sky, and all I ask is a tall ship and a star to steer her by, and the wheels kick and the wind's song and the white sails shaking, and a grey mist on the sea's face and a grey dawn breaking. I must down to the seas again, for the call of the running tide is a wild call and a clear call that may not be denied. And all I ask is a windy day with the white clouds flying and the flung spray and the blown spume and the seagulls crying. I must down to the seas again, to the vagrant gypsy life, to the gull's way and the whale's way, where the wind's like a whetted knife. And all I ask is a merry yarn from a laughing fellow rover, and quiet sleep, and a sweet dream when the long trick's over. Now, this is from another anthology, a Penguin anthology called Poems for Life. It's written by the very famous poet Robert Frost, and it's called The Road Not Taken. Two roads diverged in a yellow wood, and sorry I could not travel both and be one traveller. Long I stood and looked down one as far as I could to where it bent in the undergrowth, then took the other. It's just as fair, and having perhaps the better claim, because it was grassy and wanted wear. Though as for that, the passing there had worn them really about the same. And both that morning equally lay in leaves no steps had trodden black. Oh, I kept the first for another day. Yet knowing how way leads on to way, I doubted if I should ever come back. I shall be telling this with a sigh, somewhere ages and ages hence. Two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less travelled by. And And that has made all the difference. Here's another nonsense poem. We've had one already by Edward Lear. This is by Lewis Carroll. And it's a poem that rejoices in the sound of words, whether the words mean anything or not. It's called Jabberwocky. 'Twas brillig, and the slithy toves did gyre and gimble in the wabe. All mimsy were the borogoves, and the mome raths outgrabe. Beware the Jabberwock, my son, the jaws that bite, the claws that catch. Beware the Jub bird, and shun the Brumius Bandersnatch. He took his vorpal sword in hand, long time the manxome foe he sought. So rested he by the Tumtum tree, and stood a while in thought. And as in uffish thought he stood, the Jabberwock, with eyes of flame, came whiffly through the tulgey wood, and burbled as it came. So now let me find where my number 8 is, and it's here. Now, this is a second poem by W.B. Yeats, the Irish poet who was born in 1865, died in 1939. I loved Yeats when I was studying English at school. I understand that he actually lived in London for most of his life, and in particular in the area of Earl's Court, just round the corner from the Underground station. And this, I think, is the meaning of the reference in this particular poem to standing on the roadway or on the pavement's grey. In other words, in this poem, he's dreaming of the romantic home of Ireland. It's called The Lake Isle of Innisfree, and I always think this poem needs to be read in a sort of classic poetry type way, the sort of way that you hear poets speak their own poetry. Sometimes a bit odd, but sometimes quite dramatic. So I'm going to try that, and you can let me know your comments on a postcard afterwards. The Lake Isle of Innisfree. I will arise and go now, and go to Innisfree, and a small cabin build there of clay and wattles made. 9 bean rows will I have there, a hive for the honey bee, and live alone in the bee-loud glade. And I shall have some peace there, for peace comes dropping slow, dropping from the vales of the morning to where the cricket sings. There midnight's all a glimmer, and noon a purple glow, and evening full of the linnet's wings. I will arise and go now, for always night and day I hear lake water lapping with low sounds by the shore, while I stand on the roadway or on the pavement's grey. I hear it in the deep heart's core. Just 2 left. First, by Wordsworth. Wordsworth has written, I think, probably one of the most famous poems in the English language, Daffodils, but I'm not going to read that one today. I'm going to read about a woman, a girl, in the fields in the Highlands of Scotland. It's called The Solitary Reaper. Behold her, single in the field, yon solitary Highland lass, reaping and singing by herself. Stop here, or gently pass. Alone she cuts and binds the grain, and sings a melancholy strain. Oh, listen, for the vale profound is overflowing with the sound. No nightingale did ever chant more welcome notes to weary bands of travellers in some shady haunt amongst Arabian sands. A voice so thrilling ne'er were heard in springtime from the cuckoo bird, breaking the silence of the seas among the farthest Hebrides. Will no one tell me what she sings? Perhaps the plaintive numbers flow from old, unhappy, far-off things and battles long ago. Or is it some more humble lay, familiar matter of today, some natural sorrow, loss or pain that has been and may be again? Whate'er the theme, the maiden sang as if her song could have no ending. I saw her singing at her work and o'er the sickle bending. I listened, motionless and still, and as I mounted up the hill, the music in my heart I bore long after it was heard no more. I love that poem. Now, the last poem, and this is again a famous English writer with a strange name, the sort of name that's so strange everyone remembers it, Walter de la Mare. The poem also is strange, and in this anthology it says at the top of the poem, "This poem leaves so many questions unanswered," and it certainly does. It's strange but beautiful, a lovely language, full of passion. It's called The Listeners. "Is there anybody there?" said the traveller, knocking on the moonlit door, and his horse in the silence champed the grasses of the forest's ferny floor, and a bird flew up out of the turret above the traveller's head, and he smote upon the door a second time. "Is there anybody there?" he said. But no one descended to the traveller. No head from the leaf-fringed sill leaned over and looked into his grey eyes, where he stood perplexed and still, but only a host of phantom listeners that dwelt in the lone house, then stood listening in the quiet of the moonlight to that voice from the world of men, stood thronging the faint moonbeams on the dark stair that goes down to the empty hall, hearkening in an air stirred and shaken by the lonely traveller's call. And he felt in his heart their strangeness, their stillness answering his cry, while his horse moved, cropping the dark turf neath the starred and leafy sky. For he suddenly smote on the door, even louder, lifted his head. "Tell them I came, and no one answered, that I kept my word," he said. Never the least stir made the listeners, though every word he spake fell echoing through the shadowiness of the still house from the one man left awake. Aye, they heard his foot upon the stirrups, and the sound of iron on stone, and how the silence surged softly backward when the plunging hoofs were gone. And there we are. I hope you enjoyed it. See you again soon. Bye-bye.